day, grade 9 students, doing too much will hurt you so much. Hence, there are some things that should not go beyond limitations. Going to an extent will often lead you to many problems. Regarding this, there are rules set to limit our actions. Sometimes, these rules come from our parents, teachers, or person in authority to prohibit or to not allow us in doing too much or in doing what's not good for us. In the rules of the English language, models play a huge role in making a sentence understandable. This is applicable in giving rules and prohibitions. In line with this, let's discover another model that is used in giving prohibitions. This is Ma'am Sheila M. Pagulayan of Villa Concepcion High School, Bacolod Extension, and join me as we discover the rules of models of prohibition. Before we start, get your module, grab your pen and notebook, go to a comfortable place, and tune in to DWDYAM and CMD Cable Channel 1. We are also streaming live at SDO Kawayan Facebook page. I hope you are now ready for the lesson. Last time, you've been introduced to models of obligation. You have learned the different models that are used in giving obligation. Models must, should, and have to are used to express obligation or a call to action. Let's try to recall the differences of these three. The modal must is used when the authority for the obligation comes from the person who is speaking. This is reflected in the example, you must do your homework this evening. In this particular example, the teacher who is the speaker in authority is obliging the students to do their homework. Remember, must is used if the obligation comes from the speaker. Let's have the model have to. Have to is used to indicate duty or obligation based on work, family, rules or laws, and other factors. As for the example, you have to pay your taxes right. In this particular example, the duty and obligation comes from rules and laws. Remember, have to is used to indicate obligation based on rules and laws. And lastly, we have the modal should. Should is used for mild and weak obligations. It can be used for giving advice. For example, you should save money for your future. In this particular example, the obligation seems like an advice that the person have an option to follow or not. Before that, let's check the objectives that we are expected to learn this day. At the end of this lesson, you are expected to identify the appropriate type of models of prohibition in the sentences. Understand the models of prohibition thoroughly and use the models of prohibition in own sentences. I hope you are now ready for the lesson. Prohibitions are found everywhere. We are bounded and surrounded with different rules, most especially now that we are facing a pandemic. Just recently, we have been under strict implementation of rules under General Community Quarantine and Modified General Community Quarantine. What are the differences of these two? What are the rules and what are prohibited? Let's discover the answers by watching the short video clip titled Amended Guidelines on GCQ and MGCQ Areas.
Under the new Resolution Number 43 of the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases, the government has elaborated different amended guidelines. For areas under general community quarantine, allowed outdoor non-contact sports and exercises have been increased from walking, jogging, running, biking, golf, swimming, tennis, badminton, equestrian, now added with range shooting and skateboarding as long as health protocols are observed. Meanwhile, for MGCQ areas, more changes have been approved, mainly on movement of people, wherein if before, the public is allowed to go out 100%, now it shall only be limited to essential activities. As a response also to calls of various groups, mass gatherings are now allowed in MGCQ areas, like religious services, work conferences, and entertainment activities, provided that participants shall be limited to 50% of the sitting or venue capacity. Also in in MGCQ areas, limited face-to-face classes may be conducted in higher educational institutions or colleges, provided there is strict compliance with minimum public health standards, consultation with local government units, and compliance with guidelines set by the Commission on Higher Education. According to IATF and Presidential Spokesperson Harry Roque, all these amendments were made based on thorough study and discussion, like the new rule on mass gatherings.
Binalanse po natin yung risk na ikalat ang COVID-19 doon sa datos sa mga MGCQ. Ulitin ko po sa MGCQ lang po na pinayagan itong mga pagtitipon nito. At ang conclusion naman is baka po pwede dahil kapag 50% naman po pwedeng mag-social distancing.
Tonight, IATF members are now holding a meeting with no less than President Rodrigo Duterte in Davao City to be followed by a public address. Meleles Moras for the Nation.
Based on the video, there are rules set for us to follow. We've been living our lives differently now that we are living in the new normal. The Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases issued guidelines for us to observe. For instance, for areas under general community quarantine, allowed outdoor non-contact sports have been increased as long as health protocols are observed. Meanwhile, in MGCQ areas just like here in Pagulayan City, more changes have been approved. People cannot go out and do what they are used to before. People are only allowed to go out to buy goods and essentials. Moreover, mass gatherings are already allowed in MGCQ areas provided that participants shall be limited to 50% of the venue capacity. As an addition, face-to-face classes in higher educational institution can even be conducted in MGCQ areas as long as there is strict compliance with the minimum health standards. These are some of the rules set that are made based on thorough study and discussion. Those rules might limit or prohibit us in doing what we are used to before, but these rules are for our betterment. Now, in giving prohibition, we tend to use modals to make our statement clear and firm. As you already know, a modal is a verb that combines with another verb that indicate mood or tense. They are different from normal verbs and that they give additional function to the main verb that follows it. These modals will allow a person to express himself clearly and will allow him to express permission, prohibition, and obligation. When you hear the word prohibit, what comes or pops up in your mind? You might think of the words prevent, forbid, ban, or even the phrase do not allow. As what was mentioned, we often or commonly use prohibition in setting of rules. And to make our rules and prohibitions firm, we use may not, must not, and cannot. What are the differences of these three models? Let's discover. Let's have first the modal must not. Take note, must and not can be contracted and be combined into one word to form the word mustn't. The modal must not or mustn't is the strongest way to prohibit something. It is often found in rules set by society. Let's have here examples. You must not use cell phone inside the class. You must not park in the driveway. The first example, you must not use cell phone inside the class, pertains to a statement of a teacher imposing a strict prohibition to students not to use cell phones in the class. The second example, you must not park in the driveway, is an example of a rule set in the society that prohibits people to park in the driveway. Remember, must not is used for strong obligation. It is mostly found in the rules set in the society. Let's have here another examples. People must not roam around after 9 p.m. This example pertains to a rule set in the society prohibiting people to not go out and roam around in that curfew hour. Drivers mustn't drive without license. This example is a rule of the society that needs to be strictly followed. It is given for the drivers not to drive without license. You must not smoke inside the school. This is a rule that is set by the management that is needed to be followed. No one is excused and that it needs strict adherence to it. Let's have the model may not. May not is used to prohibit something formally. However, it is weaker than must not since there is an option whether the prohibition will be followed or not. Here are some examples. You may not wear shoes inside the office. You may not come tomorrow. You need to take some rest. These are statements of a boss addressing the employees. However, it is still an option for them whether the command will be followed or not. Remember, may not is used to prohibit something formally. However, it is weaker than must not or mustn't since the people who are accepting the command can either follow it or not. You may not go out when the press conference starts. This is a command or a prohibition in a formal situation which needs formality in giving rules and prohibition. Moreover, the statement is a weak obligation since the participants of that press conference can follow it or not. You may not eat in the conference room. This is a command or a prohibition in a formal setting. This might be a command of a person in authority prohibiting an employee of not eating in a conference room. However, the employee can have the option whether to follow it or not. We also have the modal cannot. Cannot can be combined to form the word can't. Cannot or can't are used commonly to prohibit something in English. However, it is not as formal as may not. Here are some examples. You cannot come inside my room. This is a statement of a sister prohibiting her sister from coming inside her room. You cannot drive my car. This is a statement of a parent prohibiting her son from driving the car. You cannot go to my house. Everyone is busy. This is a statement of a friend prohibiting his friend to come over his house. You cannot have the cake in the fridge. This is a statement of a sibling prohibiting his sibling to have the cake in the fridge. These are samples of prohibition that take place in informal situations. Take note, the modal can't or cannot is used commonly in informal situations. Now, let's try to check your understanding. Here are some situations that allow you to use modals of prohibition. Let's create a statement with correct modals of prohibition. Situation number 1. You are a weather forecaster. There will be a storm. Write a statement of prohibition regarding boats traveling at seas. Here is the answer. A small boat must not travel at seas. In this particular situation, the prohibition came from people in authority. Therefore, must not is used. Must not is also used for imposing strict rules that should be followed. Situation number 2. Your friend failed to make her assignment because she attended a party. She asked you if she can copy so that she'll pass. Write a statement prohibiting her to copy. Here is the answer. You cannot copy my assignment. Since the statement is happening in an informal situation, cannot is used in giving prohibition. Remember, cannot is used in giving prohibition in an informal situation. Situation number 3. You are a doctor who diagnosed your patient to be diabetic. Write a statement of prohibition telling your patient not to eat sweets anymore. Here is the answer. You must not eat sweets since you are suffering from diabetes. Since the statement requires a modal that requires a strict prohibition that should be followed by the patient, must not is used. Situation number 4. You are a boss who held a meeting. You prohibited your employees in bringing their own food in the upcoming event on the next day. Write a statement of prohibition. Here is the answer. You may not bring your food tomorrow. Since the statement is a formal one, it requires the use of the modal phrase may not. Since the speaker is a boss who gives prohibition in a formal situation, may not is used. Another, may not is used for weak prohibition. Therefore, it is still up to the employees if they will bring lunch or not. Last situation. You are the mayor of the city. Write a statement prohibiting citizens below 21 years old to not go out and roam around during this pandemic. Here is the answer. Citizens below 21 years old must not go out and roam around during this pandemic. The statement is a strict prohibition that needs to be followed. Since the rule came from a mayor and that it was set for a society to follow, the model must not or mustn't is used for strict prohibition. I hope you understood the topic well. You are now ready for the activities prepared in your module. These activities will be done at home in your own pace. First, check out this news about a recent typhoon that entered the Philippine area of responsibility. Imagine that you are a person in authority. Write 5 sentences with models of prohibition ensuring the safety of the people. Write it in separate sheet of paper and attach it in your module.
Dalawang weather system ang nagpapalakas sa hanging habagat na magpapaulan sa malaking bahagi ng bansa bukas. Isa po ang Tropical Depression Enteng na huling namataan ng Pag-asa sa layong 500 kilometers silangan ng Tuguegarao City. Taglay po nito ang lakas ng hangin nasa 55 kilometers per hour at bugsong nasa 70 kilometers per hour. Kikilos ito pa north-northeast sa bilis na 15 kilometers per hour. Sa forecast track ng Pag-asa, posible pa itong lumakas at maging tropical storm bukas ng umaga. Pero inaasahang lalabas na rin ng PAR bukas ng hapon. Bukod sa bagyong Enteng, isa pang low pressure area ang nabuo 260 kilometers sa kanluran ng Iba, Zambales. May posibilidad itong maging bagyo pero wala pang direktang epekto sa taglay ng ating panahon. Dahil po sa dalawang weather system na yan, malakas ang hanging habagat na nagpapaulan sa malaking bahagi ng bansa. Sa datos ng Metro Weather, umaga pa lang, maulan na sa malaking bahagi ng Luzon at Western Visayas. Bukas po yan. At mas malalakas ang ulan sa Central Luzon at Mindanao. Sa hapon at gabi, uulanin na rin ang iba pang bahagi ng Visayas at mas malalakas ang ulan sa Northern Luzon at Mindanao. At dahil pa rin sa bagyong Enteng at Habagat, lagpas 4 na metro ang taas ng alon sa Northern at Eastern Seaboard ng Northern Luzon. Delikado rin pong pumalaot ang maliliit na sasakyang pandagat sa Western Seaboard ng buong Luzon.
After doing that, check your module and do the remaining activities. If you are done, pass it to your English teacher. If you find difficulties in understanding the lesson, remember that you can always contact your teacher to further explain to you the topic. That is how we end our lesson for today. Bear in mind that prohibition and rules are everywhere. It will never be a burden if you do have a positive perspective in accepting it. We should also understand the models used in every statement in order for us to grasp what the speaker wants us to understand. So the next time that you give prohibition, be sure to use correct models in order for you to impart and express yourself the way that you want to be understood. This is Ma'am Sheila May M. Pagulayan. Keep safe and goodbye, everyone.